thank you for your remarks. The parallels with Iran and Russia, both helping, Iran's definitely helping Hamas. I suspect they're helping Russia, but I mean, Russia's helping Hamas as well. They certainly benefit from the spotlight being turned away from Ukraine, and but I think President Biden and the proposal he's going to have is going to be supportive of both the areas. Mr. Benjamin, again, thank you for your remarks yesterday at the, I guess it was yesterday, time flies, the day before, but you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Ranking Member Cohen. Thank you, Ambassador Markarova, for your remarks, and thank you for hosting me and us here today. We are at war. Israel is at war. A war that we did not choose, but a war that we will end once we defeat Hamas, and we will defeat Hamas. We will make sure that they have no more capabilities to terrorize any of our people, any of our citizens, or any of our soldiers anywhere around Israel or anywhere around the world. I woke up 12 days ago now, in the middle of the night. It was 6:30 in the morning in Israel, understanding that we are at war and realizing that my youngest brother and his wife and 4 kids are in their safe room in Netiv HaSara, adjacent to the Erez crossing, adjacent to the Gaza, it's the closest neighborhood to Gaza. A safe room that he stayed in for the next 12 hours with firing and house-to-house manhunts by Hamas. After 12 hours of barely hearing from him, and with him having his own personal pistol outside of the window to make sure that nobody's coming at them, they managed to finally escape. Learning afterwards that their friends and neighbors 2 houses down were massacred. Learning afterwards that my sister-in-law's relative, brother-in-law, who was part of the emergency preparedness unit of Netiv HaSara, was killed while taking action against Hamas. This is a story, in a way one could say a good one, because they survived and they were not injured, at least physically. But emotionally, of course, we know them, like everybody else, are going to carry these scars for years to come. To date, we're talking about over 1,400 people who have been brutally murdered, over 3,500 that we know of and that we're coming out publicly with that have been injured, and over 200 who have been kidnapped. These are not just Israelis. These are not just Jews. I'm holding here a sheet which shows 41 countries of whom their people have been affected, either killed or injured or kidnapped. And this is what we know to date. There are far more that we still don't know of. I'm holding here a few examples of names of American citizens. In this case, I think they're all, 3 of them are also Israeli, but they are American citizens. All 3 of them have been kidnapped. There are probably more, because we don't yet know the numbers. Why don't we know all the numbers yet? Because we can't identify all the bodies. Why can't we identify all the bodies? Because they were mutilated, they were burnt, they were hidden, they were taken away. So yes, we're at war, and we will win this war. But we will win this war also with the support of the international community, and first and foremost by the United States. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, and to the Commission, and to the US Congress, and to the administration for everything that you have been doing up to now, and that you are continuing to doing as we speak now in support of Israel in this war against Hamas to defeat Hamas. Understanding in the most unequivocal manner and in the clearest way that these are evil people, if we can even call them people. This is Israel's 9/11, only if you take the proportion of the size of Israel, this is 9/11 times 10 at least. And this is Israel's fight on ISIS, because some of the atrocities that came out from Israel, the footage that came out, is even crazier than we saw in the darkest days of ISIS. I'm sparing this honorable commission from a video that I have, portraying some of these atrocities. I have them available. If the commission wishes to see them, I'm more than happy to send it over. This is the face of Hamas, and this is what the whole world should realize and recognize. And this is not just an Israeli war, it's not just an Israeli fight, again, which we did not start. Because today it's in Israel, tomorrow, God forbid, it's in Ukraine, who have been suffering enough and more than enough. And the day after that, it could be even here in the United States. Because these terrorist organizations are not only against Israelis or against Jews, and not only in Israel, they are against mankind and anything which calls for decency, any entity and anybody who calls for protecting human rights and protecting individuals and protecting civilians. I'm wearing this blue ribbon here in recognition and support of those who are held captive and for calling for their immediate release. And this is one of the things that we are calling also on the Commission to help us push forward. Hamas have no value for human life. They are doing, while Israel is doing its utmost to protect human life, including Palestinians in Gaza, by even calling for them to go down south so that they won't be affected by the war. Hamas is doing everything in its power to harm civilians, to harm its own civilians. And everything that Hamas is committing and committed is no less than war crimes. And if you want, war crimes against humanity. And this is why Israel is working within the international human rights law and within the military law. And this is not just Hamas. We're seeing threats emanating from Hezbollah in the north. We're seeing threats and terrorism also taking place by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. And we're seeing Iran sitting on the sidelines, smiling and enjoying every moment of it. And this is the same Iran that has been supporting these terrorist organizations for ever so too many years. And this is a time also to point the finger in Iran's direction as an entity which is responsible also for these things. The deterrence messages that come from the United States are highly important. They carry a very heavy weight, and we are grateful for the messages that are sent across, including through military maritime presence in the Eastern Mediterranean and other messages that I won't go into now. We need to continue this because these are the messages that our enemies and foes, all our enemies and foes, understand. This war will take time. It's not another cycle of violence where we put a band-aid or a patch on it. The idea is, as I stated earlier, to eliminate the threat of Hamas once and for all. We are grateful to the United States for its support, including with hopefully the supplemental support which will come through in Congress over the next short while. We are grateful for the sanctions and designations on Hamas by the United States, including just yesterday, sanctions against another 10 individuals. We are calling for more sanctions, more designations, and for other countries around the world that have not yet come to terms with the fact that Hamas is a terrorist organization to do so here and now, sending a very, very clear message. The unequivocal support that we are seeing and hearing from Congress as well as administration, as well as so many countries around the world is heartwarming. It gives us the tailwind to fight this war, and it gives us the ability and the strength to win this war. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. We appreciate your testimony and your work. I'd like to ask each of you, Do either of you have any concrete knowledge of Iran's involvement in either Ukraine? We know in Ukraine with drones, but any involvement with Hamas and what's going on in Israel?
As we've been saying for years, Hamas and Iran cooperation was there and is there. We're seeing this very, very clearly. It comes through training of Hamas operatives, whether it's in Iran, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's in other places. We know that a very vast majority of the funding of Hamas comes from Iran. And as I said earlier, Iran at this point is sitting and smiling. And seeing them reaching out to Hamas leaders even now, today, shows exactly where they are and what they're doing.
Have you seen any indications that Russia has helped Hamas or through Iran or directly?
I don't know to say this in front of this commission at this point. We are keeping a very close eye on all countries in the region.
Thank you. You know, they certainly benefit from it, and Putin's statements were less than concerning and seemed less than heartfelt about what happened. And he's smiling at what's happening now because it benefits him as well. I believe we're going to be able to have support. There will be some dissenting voices, but I think eventually we'll get it. But we've got to get a speaker, at least a temporary speaker, and hopefully that can happen in the next day or two, and then we can get some action. And the Ukraine package, I know, will be large, and one that maybe won't have to incur issues with the additional supplementaries. Israel, I think, is pretty secure. I think we've got strong support for Israel, and we'll have that. I saw in the news, you may not have seen this, there were 2 hostages that were said found in Gaza, killed. Have you heard that?
I haven't yet seen that. I hope that no hostages have been harmed physically.
That was my next question. It was a grandmother and I think her 12-year-old granddaughter. You're nodding. Yeah, it was on the news, and I don't know how they found them, but they said they were found.
Yes.
But you know of no other situation.
This is, again, part of the cynical use and approach of Hamas to human lives, playing with everybody's minds, playing with people's souls, and with zero dignity to people and to human beings, regardless of where they're from. Again, it doesn't matter if we are Israeli or American or Ukrainian or any other nation. And we are calling, as I said earlier, for the immediate release of every single hostage safely back to their homes.
Do you believe Hamas health ministries' statements any more than the ambassador believes Putin's statements?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, they're both 2 of a kind. They are 2 of a kind. It's a lot of lies. Ambassador, we have attempted to get some monies from Putin and from the Soviet oligarchs to help rebuild Ukraine. Do you have any new information about that or concerns?
Thank you for this question. Well, first of all, I think it's very just that for all these horrible destructions, which only for one first year of war, the World Bank estimated at 411 billion of just physical destruction, that it has to be compensated and paid by the Russians. So with regard to the Russian oligarchs and everyone who finances this war, supports this war, thank you to Congress. We already have the possibility through the court to confiscate it, and DOJ already has moved forward with one confiscation of Malafeyev's money, 5.4 million, and others. It's going to take time, but I think the major question right now to discuss with all the G7 is a sovereign assets. It's the Russian sovereign assets, which we know that there are at least, in the vicinity of 300 or 400 billion, or maybe even more, frozen by G7 countries, but not only. As we recently discovered, there is about 200 billion that are frozen in the Euroclear system in Belgium. So I'm very glad that there are more renewed talks right now between the G7 ministers of finance on how to confiscate and how to better use this money even now. And I think we have to join forces there because, again, we're very grateful for the American support. We are very much counting on this additional supplementary budget. But at the end of the day, it's not the American or Ukrainian or European taxpayers who have to pay for this. It's the Russians who have to pay for their damages. So we look forward to working with Congress, and we're working very actively with administration, the State Department, and Treasury on how to better do it. And as the former Minister of Finance, I not only believe, I know that it can be done. And I know this is a very specific case that will not jeopardize the untouchability of the sovereign money, which is normal in the normal circumstances. But this is a very specific case of a country that has been condemned by 154 countries in the UN for the illegal aggression. We have in all three major cases the cases against Russia on both aggression and genocide and everything else, and it's only natural and just to use the sovereign assets as well as the private assets of the Putin's oligarchs to compensate and to pay this.
I think the House Foreign Affairs Committee had a hearing on a bill to do that yesterday and collect those assets. I was unfortunately couldn't attend. I was with some family members of Israeli victims. I read something today. A gentleman who'd been in Hamas at one time. He's now renounced them. And he said that Hamas is not interested in the Palestinians, uses the Palestinians, and really wants to have an Islamist state across in the Middle East. Do you believe that's accurate, that Hamas is really thinking beyond the sea to the river and really looking across the entire Middle East?
So I believe you can hear from an expert on Hamas in a few minutes, far better than I can, maybe, and not be accused of being biased, because sometimes maybe Israelis are considered biased when they talk about these terrorist organizations which are out to kill us. And believe me, we are not biased. Hamas is holding its own people hostage. It has been holding its own population hostage in Gaza since 2007 when they took over. Ask any average Palestinian, any average Gazan who's willing to speak if he's not scared of Hamas coming afterwards and killing him. It's Israel that's been providing economic benefits for Gazans. 20,000 Palestinians from Gaza have been coming daily to work in Israel and bringing food to their families. That's 20,000 families. Make the maths. And this is just one small example of the areas that Israel has been investing in to help the population. Hamas will have nothing of that. Look at their charter of Hamas, which calls for destruction, annihilation of Jews, of Israel, and yes, wants to control everything from the Mediterranean Sea until the Jordan River. That is their aspiration. That is what they want to do, with zero care about civilians, including their own, whom they take as human shields. As we're speaking now, they're firing rockets from underneath hospitals, from underneath schools, from underneath mosques, from within residential areas, putting their own people at risk and sending them to die as well. This is not what Israel is about, but this is what Hamas is about and has been about. And now, once and for all, unfortunately, really unfortunately, it took such a horrific war that they launched on Israel for the whole world to realize what Hamas is really about and what we've been saying for so many years, that Hamas stands for. But it's not only Hamas. It's Hamas, it's the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, it's Hezbollah, it's all of these terrorist organizations who have zero care about human beings. And this is what we should, this is who we should go after and make sure they don't do any more harm.
Well, I certainly agree with you, and I think with the event we had yesterday, the day before, with the destruction at the hospital and the press doing a very poor job of reporting the information, they almost reported it as fact. Quite a few mainstream media sources did, and then it flew in the Middle Eastern street as if it was fact. And now we see, of course, that it was not, that there was probably a Palestinian weapon that had gone awry. what do you think there's any way, as you say, Israel would be seen as biased? How could we go about trying to give that information? Do you think there's any ear that might be opened to the argument that it was not an Israeli bomb?
So I call also through this esteemed commission to anybody and everybody who's willing to hear and able to hear, do not follow the news which is sent out by Hamas or by the Palestinians who are supporting of Hamas in such a blind way and in an automatic manner. It's very easy to come and accuse Israel. Israel is taking things very seriously and in a responsible manner. We look into these things, we check these things, we do not come out with fake news, and we came out with very clear evidence that the unfortunate bombing of this hospital in Gaza was conducted by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, by one of their rockets falling on this hospital. It is not the first time, far from it, of rockets that Hamas and PIJ are launching that fall on Palestinians within Gaza. And the denouncement against Israel from including countries in our region is something which is uncalled for, something which is, as far as we're concerned, intolerable. We've called them out on this. We call on the US to call these countries out on this, and out of following blindly statements that come out by Hamas.
Well, thank you. I think we are going to have some more information come out soon from America about the intelligence we had and the knowledge and the reason why it's just reliable information that it was a Palestinian rocket. And we need to get that out, and hopefully we can find some ears that are still open, not closed in that area. It would have been stupid for Israel to bomb a hospital. I mean, that's the first thing people will say. Why would they do that? Are they crazy? No, they're not crazy. Hamas is lying. That would have been the more logical thing. But people don't understand that yet. You've been so kind to give us your time. We know you have to be somewhere, Madam Ambassador, and we appreciate your testimony and your time. And, sir, if you'd like to stay, you're welcome to stay. And if not, we understand it and appreciate your attendance, and we'll do everything we can to help.
Thank you. I'm going back to our war room at the embassy.
Thank you. You're welcome. Second panel, get ready.